Ow!
Oh, you got me all wet. Wow, buddy. Can you do it again?
Do it again.
Let's say hi.
Say hi to who?
Big chum.
Let's see.
Let me tell you a story. When Lee May was 7, her parents died. Her aunt and uncle wouldn't take care of her, so a neighbor, a friend of her parents, sold her into prostitution. She lived in a brothel for 10 years. Lee May doesn't live in the United States. She lives across the Pacific, in Cambodia. For the 10 dark years of her life, pimps imprisoned her in dirty, windowless rooms. She never saw the sunlight. In Cambodia, an orphaned child with no education, no knowledge of how to read or write, has to live without one more thing: hope. Lee May never thought she would escape. Lee May didn't control her fate. Her neighbor sold her when she was too young to know what a brothel was. Pimps gave her electric shocks, starved her, and drugged her with methamphetamines. They forced her to serve clients, at least 20 a day. Lee May was kept in the city of Phnom Penh with a group of 11 other girls. They became like sisters. These 12 share their fate with an estimated 30,000 in Cambodia alone. When Lee May was 17, after 10 years of what she described as no life at all, she was rescued during a brothel raid called for by Acting Women in Distressing Situations, an organization founded by Somali imam to combat sex trafficking. Lee May was taught to read and write, to readjust to society. She was luckier than the other girls. Now she has chosen to fight against the system that imprisoned her, to fight for the girls still held in chains. Lee May joins Somali Imam's organization and, with some encouragement, has agreed to share her story. She wants us to recognize the problem. She wants us to act. Let's look at the facts and numbers. At this time, 2.4 million people across the globe are victims of human trafficking. 80% of them are being exploited as sex slaves. 2 out of every 3 victims are female. $32 billion are earned each year by the criminals in charge of human trafficking networks. This is more than Starbucks, Nike, and Google combined. Only 1 out of every 100 victims of trafficking is ever rescued. In Cambodia alone, there are 30,000 prostitutes, 35% of which are under the age of 16. Children as young as 5 years old are being sold in the flesh trade, and each year, hundreds of thousands of boys and girls are bought, sold, or kidnapped, and then forced to have sex with grown men. As many as 1/3 of the trafficking victims in the sex trade are children. Even in the United States, only 10% of police stations have any protocol to deal with trafficking. Each year, the Office to Monitor and Combat Trafficking in Persons issues a Trafficking in Persons report, which ranks other countries with a 3-tiered system. Countries that are actively fighting trafficking are ranked in Tier 1. Those that are somewhat addressing the issue are put in Tier 2, and Tier 3 countries are doing nothing or very little to combat trafficking. In Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia are on the 2+ watch list, meaning they are doing little to combat trafficking. Philippines, Cambodia, Laos, and Indonesia fare little better. Even though the U.S. attempts to be a global policeman to stop human trafficking, it remains a key destination for victims and a source of traffickers and sex tourists. About 50,000 women and children from mainly Southeast Asia come each year, and they end up in New York, Florida, California, and Hawaii. Half of this group is forced into prostitution. American men represent the largest group of sex tourists in South and Southeast Asia.
The age range of the kids in the industry range from anywhere from 5 years old to about 17 years old. Once the child has worked in that industry in a particular section or a particular village for some time, that child is actually shipped to another country where the cycle begins again. So a brothel owner can make tens of thousands of dollars off one child.
A common consequence of the child sex trade is the spread of sexually transmitted disease.
We've located about 14 centers where these children, most of them under the age of 10, have caught AIDS and they're in their last stage.
Traffickers often use locals in a community to find and recruit these children into a life of prostitution. These families make a typical annual income of $50 and as a result are in desperate need of money and food.
Child trafficking trade has become a quick solution. It's become an easy solution. It's become a part of their life. These children oftentimes are tricked into believing that they're going to be working at a regular restaurant to raise money for their families, and therefore their families let them go. Sometimes these kids are kidnapped.
Many governments in Southeast Asia, especially Thailand, say that they are working against child prostitution. In reality, child prostitution boosts the economy, so officials are more than willing to look the other way. Politicians line their own pockets by stinting the lives of children who could have been the next Thomas Edison or Jeremy Lin. In the United States, the PROTECT Act of 2003 has strengthened action against sexual abuse of children at home, but it is still not strong enough to stop those willing to travel abroad. Without an outcry from the people, neither the governments of Southeast Asia nor of the United States will act. It's up to you to make change. Numerous organizations, like that of Somali Man, fight for these dispossessed and imprisoned persons, but without donations, without the money to keep pushing forward, they can do nothing. Every donation counts, but they are not all that count. Here, in the democracy of the United States of America, we're lucky we can use our voices and our opinions to shape the policy of our governments. But with liberty comes responsibility. Responsibility to the repressed, to the oppressed. We have the power through our policy to influence the fate of thousands throughout the world. To hold this power in our hands and not use it to further the common good. That is criminal. That is why we must spread the word and take to the streets. We must use our influence to get our government to act. And every step we take, however small, is a step towards a better world.